Oh my gosh, Thomas, we had some comments in the last YouTube that I think you need to read. Remember, I wanted to keep the video under 50 minutes? Well, Derek Ruiz said, Miss Betsy, I want to respectfully inform you that we AIM fanatics wish Sir Thomas Paine's audio files were 3 hours long. 50 minutes is nothing because the time flies by and we're just enraptured by Sir Paine. So 3 hours are fine for us. And then Mr. Aceman said, you guys can talk 2 hours. I learned fact check and post. Keep going. Breaking Bombast says, go as long as you want. And Rocky Raccoon says, just for the record, Betsy, I like it when your videos are long. So there will be no clock on you today.
Woo! Yeehaw! Right. Betsy, are you kidding? I get to go out in the weeds and stay out there?
Okay, well, then...
What are you going to do?
All right, well, okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get started on these tweets. Now, I want to start out with one that we missed on August 28th. Remember, people, if you want to follow these tweets with us, just click on the link in the description box. Plus, I have some of the articles that we are quoting. We don't have time to spend drilling down on some of these articles, so you got to do your homework, go in there and grab them and read them. Okay. New poll. A majority of Americans think that John Brennan and James Comey should have their security clearances revoked. Not surprised.
That's where we start?
Yes.
Oh, my. Well, I may not come back out of that one for quite a while. You know what I think about that. Anybody who's in the intelligence agency, especially in such a top position, who goes onto the news has broken, just by that alone, that's an oxymoron. You cannot do that. There are specific spokespeople for any agency, especially concerning top secret material or any material handled in, like James Clapper. Anything James Clapper is telling you is a crime. Okay? When are people going to wake up to this? It is illegal for 5 years, and this is the abuse of corporate intelligence, which we talk about so much. It is this type of abuse of top secret clearances. Over 800,000 people have top secret security clearances right now. And they leak things all the time on the news, and then they just come out and spout it on the news. But when someone who's a whistleblower, like Reality Winner, or whatever her name is, who recently got convicted, the only people who get convicted are actually usually whistleblowers trying to do the right thing. And again, a shout out to the FBI whistleblowers who are bringing out things more and more beautiful, and you're doing it as leaks and nobody's catching you. We told you, if you're a white hat in the FBI, you better start doing your job and start leaking this stuff like the black hats do. Because if you don't, you're going down with them. I'm talking to all 37,000 of you FBI people who many people say it's only the top that's corrupt. I say in agreement with Betsy. Them,
unless they come out and say something. You're supposed to be in law enforcement. You need to do your job.
Exactly.
Okay, the next tweet.
No, wait a second. John Brennan and Clapper are flapping their mouths so much because that's how guilty they are. The more these people flap, like look at Donna Brazile. Remember all the lies she told us in her book and on the news? Now you keep seeing her face flapping the news that she's still anti-Trump. She isn't going to talk about the corruption. And now we find out that it's literally hundreds of millions of dollars that Donna Brazile helped launder for Hillary Clinton's victory campaign. Holy cow, not just the $84 million directly from Maine and checks written far beyond what is allowed. And then they're just simply sent out to the states and then brought back together. Well, they weren't even doing that. They weren't even laundering the money properly. They were just simply writing the big checks and putting them in Hillary's account. And with all the money in the world, just think about that. All the George Soros money in the world, she still couldn't win. So Trump is right. And now we find out 59% of Americans who have been polled say that Clapper and Brennan and Clapper, I should say, should both lose their security clearances. They should have had them pulled to begin with because they were already like Sally Yates, who filled in for Loretta Lynch when she jumped ship because she was so guilty over what she did with trying to manipulate that the New York police that were involved with seizing Anthony Weiner's laptop, which we now know is the big deal. And in a minute when we address this, we're going to really get into that because we told everyone from the beginning what was going on. We're going to tell you again, and now you're going to recognize it as what is coming out as these leaks that the president is talking about, everybody's talking about, because these leaks are so beautifully pointed and so sharp and so accurate and so just they're the key to the whole thing. So these leaks are coming out. And what are they saying? Everything that Trump is saying in his tweets. But see, Trump doesn't get to add in between the lines like we do. And so thank you, Mr. President. We now know you're listening to us. And so we're going to work harder to make sure anything that you tweet about, we tell the truth about. Because what's happening, folks, is the following. News is created days before it happens. John McCain was dead a long time before they told you he was dead. Okay? And nobody predicted it. I just want to underscore that. Nobody predicted the time of his death. That's nonsense. But the news is created. And really, a huge part of the news is created by people who get to screen it beforehand, before it goes as a release from the Associated Press and Reuters-Thompson.
And may I add, you know this firsthand because you used to do this when you used to work in the military.
Correct. So I suggest to you that the bunker that Obama and that Barry Soetoro and Michael Obama are living in, which they don't live in, one of their, I think, 6 houses now that we're paying for security and everything else on, building walls around it, making it secure. Who lives there, has gone in and hasn't come out, hasn't been seen in the news since she went in there to control that bunker. She's the one screening this news to make sure that the far left squelches anything, and also that it's slanted so that before it is sent through Dianne Feinstein, China Feinstein, right? That's what we call her now. Miss Spy for China. And isn't it interesting that it's the Chinese that have been found out? Wait till you hear what I have to say about this. This is unbelievable.
Somewhat stay on the path here. But Dianne Feinstein, I think you want to point out her connections to Avid.
That's the point. That what is on the news was written days before, because it has to be screened by Avid, ISIS management, after it's screened by the NSA, and now the FBI Counterintelligence Department, and now, it wasn't before, the Department of Justice National Security Division, so that they can screen everything so that they have excuses and alibis for anything that is released in the news. And then what gets on the news? You see, why do people who literally are hate speakers get the top headlines? Why does that happen? Because that is designed that way. So what we're doing is, after Trump drops a tweet, which means he's already acted on it, by the way. Remember, when he puts the tweet, it's the news for us, but he's already acted on it. He's not going to tell you something he hasn't already taken care of. Okay? Have you ever seen anything he tweeted wrong? And how many times did he tweet that it was a prophecy? And how many of his prophecies have gone wrong? None.
I don't think I understand what you're saying. I don't recall any time that he prophesied anything.
He predicts things.
Okay, well, that's different than prophecy.
I call that prophecy. Okay, let's use the word predict. He predicts things all the time. Why? Because he's already acted on them. He's got more information than the rest of us.
He's the ultimate insider.
He is the ultimate insider, and T-drops are so much more powerful than any other letter of the alphabet drops. Because why? He's not obscuring things. He's telling you what he's already done, and he's warning the people who he is going to do deals with what he's about to do, so he softens them up. We are getting so used to the way he does this, and other people are so they're just blind. They cannot see it. They go into Trump derangement syndrome because they can't understand he's doing a deal. And a couple of the deals he's doing now are so amazing that it has blown all members of the conclave's minds, okay? And we're going to go to those tweets in a minute.
Well, can I go to the next tweet?
Not yet. Corporate intelligence must be ended. He's ending it. Why? He's doing military-grade security clearances on people with national security clearance, top secret security, secure compartmental information.
Well, I hear
facility.
the unions are really bucking this. The federal employee unions, they're very upset about all of these background checks being done.
Well, they can buck it because they can say that it's not national security, but in fact, it is. Everything in the federal agency is national security because it's economic.
And this is a great way to flush out these senior executive service operatives.
Well, you see that Trump is using economics to run our country, which is what we hired him for, a businessman. And for the first time, businessmen make sense, and we haven't had one in the White House forever, and he's making sense, and he's creating the policies that construct the world. He is deconstructing the bad economic policies. That's beyond war. That's beyond the bombs. That's beyond paying Lockheed Martin trillions of dollars that they rip off and then pay to what now comes to the news as Mueller and Comey's collusion that's been going on for decades. Hello, Americans for Innovation, and you're putting out article after article after article to show that collusion, but we did an intelligence report on it over and over and over again. Their collusion is so ridiculous that how the two of them could be working and how it appears that Robert Mueller has given Comey immunity is beyond belief unless you understand the system, and then you'll just say SOP, standard operating procedure. Corrupt intelligence people, standard operating procedure. How did an ex-communist and a radical Islamic fascist become the head of the CIA? Did you notice the news that we told you from the beginning? The second that we pointed out that it was Brennan who started his version of what Comey was doing, Comey's 28 crimes, treasonous crimes, in our intelligence report. You can look that up. John Brennan was jealous, so he started Crossfire Hurricane without any intelligence. He actually invented the intelligence. Now, he says, he's divorced from the dossier. Now, his whole thing was based upon the dossier, too. He was there from the beginning, but John McCain was there from the ultra beginning. They did not include Brennan in the Comey conspiracy with the Democratic National Committee because he's an idiot and he made too many mistakes and his crime is just littered with evidence. And so we point this out all the time. 12 of the 19 hijackers of 911 had the signature of John Brennan on it. You want to know why? And we've told you this before. Because after George H.W. Bush was no longer president, where did he live? More than half the time he lived in the palace of the Prince of Saud, the King of Saud, which is the Saudi Arabian royal house, which Osama bin Laden is a member of. He had a skiff put in to the palace of the King of Saudi Arabia. That was during the time that John Brennan was there, and they blew up Americans. They killed Americans there. That was John Brennan. He allowed that. It was John Brennan who created, specifically with another person, I'm not even going to go into all that detail, but another person who helped create an expedited visa approval center in the palace of King Saud so that they could send over any terrorist they wanted anytime, almost with diplomatic immunity, but certainly with an expedited visa that came directly expedited by the highest levels of the government and basically stamped by the CIA. In other words, those guys are getting into this country no matter what. Hello, John Brennan. You helped with 911. You were one of the key players. Let's remember the planning of it happened in the palace of King Saud because George H.W. Bush, was the person responsible for 911, and he used his son as an idiot to go on vacation from the time he was elected and inaugurated until 911. You know that George W. Bush, took more days off as president from the time he was inaugurated until 911 than all other presidents in history in their entire 8 years. Okay? He was a no president. He wasn't even there. And when they whispered something in his ear that he was being supposedly attacked, he did nothing. Why? Because he was a complicit idiot. He was a useful idiot. They didn't even tell him the truth. John Brennan is a useful idiot. He is the one who compromised Crossfire Hurricane, and he basically was in league with Robert Mueller and Comey from the beginning, from the moment that in March. But we tell you that it was planned in December of 2016. We've told you this 1,000 times. But we also told you that they were compromised in July of 2015. So the WikiLeaks say that they admit they were breached in December 14th, 2015. That's when they realized it. They were already told ahead of time in July of 2015 that the Democratic National Committee server had been breached, but not only breached, but messed with. And yet they did nothing. So our intelligence communities were weaponized against Trump to keep Trump out and Hillary in because they had everything at stake. They were surveilling everyone illegally. They were abusing the FISA courts. They were abusing NSA raw data. They were bombing 8 countries without any congressional approval, ripping us off through the UN. Obama's 8 years were the worst 8 years of American history it's going to be looked at from the future. When we look back, we're going to look at Obama as one of the worst things that ever happened to America. And what he did with the intelligence community was he corporatized it. He allowed corporate intelligence to take over where the military have security clearances that are real, with real background checks. SES members in corporate intelligence, they get a security clearance. They can be foreign nationals and get a security clearance. They have no background check.
He had his security clearance.
Now, you surprised me with this. And you know I go off on this because I was in intelligence and I know that everything they're doing is so illegal because I signed those documents. I know what they say. Those people signed those documents. There is no reason whatsoever for anyone who is not active in the federal government, and hopefully if they have top secret security clearances, military, or at least they've signed military agreements that say they go to jail for their treasonous behavior, their seditious behavior if they commit espionage, which is what we're seeing all over the place here.
Well, then that perfectly segues into the next one. Okay, take a breath.
Thank you.
Okay. Hillary Clinton's emails, many of which are classified information, got hacked by China. Next move better be by the FBI or DOJ, or after all of their other missteps, Comey, McCabe, Strzok, Page, or FISA dirty dossier, their credibility will be gone forever.
Let us explain to you again what happened with Hillary's email server. Okay? Now, hang on to your hat, because if you're making a list and you're seeing how correct the conclave is, and Betsy usually beats us to the punch, with a nice short statement, but we do all this work and we find out the same thing she does. So what happens? Hillary set up her email based upon her husband's email account, knowing that it was illegal, with an excuse just like the foundations that they set up, that then their library, the presidential library, rolled into their foundations they'd set up decades before. They're lawyers. They set these things up so they could get out of it from the beginning. They had staff who were charged and went to jail for the very crimes of just setting up an email, their own email, private email, and then dealing with government business. They knew exactly what they were doing. Who did they use? Brian Pagliano. He's a criminal. He refused to even answer to the Congress with a subpoena to come and testify. Okay, why isn't he in jail? He is the one who did the following, and this is so beautiful. We told all FBI members and the 117,000 members of the Department of Justice, y'all should just quit. If you're honest, quit so you're not part of any of that. There, that's what I tell you. Every single DOJ person, that's the reason Bruce Orr won't quit. That's the reason these SCS members, and especially DOJ, they have supreme power. They won't quit. That's the reason there's 117,000 of them protecting their own jobs. But what I'm telling you is Brian Pagliano is a Chinese spy. Who didn't know that? We all knew that, didn't we? Because he set up the servers so that they had remote servers, so they had tunnels to other servers that weren't where the first server was. How many times did they do that? Well, at least twice. He could work on Hillary's personal email server from the Democratic National Committee, and sitting right next to him was Imran Awan, who had blackmail and had basically controlled Debbie Wasserman Schultz so much that he extorted her and extorted the entire Department of Justice. He extorted the entire Congress. He sat right next to Brian Pagliano, the criminal, who allowed, hang on now, I hope you're sitting down, a courtesy copy of every one of Hillary's emails to be sent, according to the whistleblower FBI White Hat source, who now everybody is quoting is real, so I have to believe it is real. And by the way, True Pundit, you said it first. I have to admit it. The other Thomas Paine, True Pundit, did say it first, and he just got raked over the coals for saying it. And I didn't say this specifically, but I told you anyone could do this, and this was done from the beginning. And it didn't matter to me who did it. China, North Korea, Syria, Iran, Israel, I told you they all did it. Because why? Brian Pagliano is a spy. And he was supposed to be a spy. He's the fall guy. He's the Peter Strzok for the Crossfire Hurricane, which led into the Robert Mueller Special Counsel investigation. Brian Pagliano, along with...
Where is Brian Pagliano?
He's still doing his job.
What job?
He's still controlling all this information, Soros' illegal money to the Democratic National Committee, their illegal manipulation of their election money, and the fraudulent way that they did the primaries last year. Still going on. Thank you, Brian.
So wouldn't, under normal circumstances, be that the FBI would be investigating this guy and he'd be arrested?
Yes, normally.
Okay, so are there any good people in the FBI? Or are you
No.
all corrupt?
No, if you don't quit or whistleblow, you're just as bad as James Comey.
All the way down.
I need to spit after I say his name, because his name, even in my mouth, I can't hear a word out of his mouth anymore, because every word is predicated as a lie.
Wife and Strzok and his Melissa Hodgman wife, man-wife. I don't know. What is that?
He is MK Ultra, probably mind.
And then you got Rodenstein and his wife Barsomian. So they all intermarry and intertwine. It's just one big rat's nest.
We've already proven that the senior executive service members are all MK Ultra programmed. They are also CIA programmed. I mean, who doesn't know this? That's why they all take their orders from Valerie Jarrett in the bunker where Obama and his children are supposed to be living. But
it's Planet of the Apes, Valerie Jarrett.
Oh, well, lots of people with bad hair can look like Planet of the Apes. And Planet of the Apes, I mean, those costumes, really, give it a rest. It's like the Nazi costumes with Indiana Jones. Please, really, give it a rest.
Sorry, she's a thug. If she's doing that, she is a thug, and I'm going to call her out as being one. Now, are we going to move on to some more tweets? Or
I'm just saying that Valerie Jarrett is running the Obama OFA, which has, 30,000 people on the street who are all paid by George Soros, so they simply use George Soros money. And remember, when Obama, in his 8 years, Valerie Jarrett taught him how to set up slush funds so that he had infinite money he stole from other federal agencies, put it into slush funds. So remember, $8 billion in a telephone for poor people slush fund that they used, and nobody ever got any phones? $8 billion. That's the tip of the iceberg, folks. Lockheed Martin, Comey, and Mueller stole trillions of dollars, okay? And who did it go to? Who holds the golden share of Lockheed Martin? That would be the Queen.
The Queen of England is involved. When are people going to look at the Privy Council? Richard Dearlove.
Now, let's go back. Hillary was set up from the beginning because now we know, and probably this had something to do with the fire in her house, her trying to destroy this server, because her original server, as she testified, and I never thought about it, was Bill's server in their house. It was his little tiny, little bitsy itsy computer. And then that's what Hillary used and Bill used to inform anybody who paid to play. And we told you this from the beginning. Brian Pagliano set that up too. He set up her other server. He set up the server in the basement, in the bathroom. He set up the server that went to Imran Awan. He set up the server that went to Basira, that was sitting in Basira's office that Basira says was never there, which we have pictures of. So Imran Awan added 80 people from Congress into this pay-to-play. All of their BlackBerries, all of their iPads, all of their computers, their passwords, the entire DNC, and the content of Soros's instructions to Podesta. Now, remember, I've said all of this. Look in DC Leaks. So what does the new revelation say? Woo! The Chinese were not only getting a courtesy copy from every email coming in and out of Hillary's server, both at her house personally, and at her office, and at the DNC, and with Podesta. How did they get Podestas? That's Imran Awan. And Debbie Wasserman Schultz, when they found out the espionage was going on in Congress, he extorted her and he got into a case where they gave him full immunity for all of his espionage. And then what did he do? Well, he got a promotion when he got kicked off the Hill, and she brought him over to the DNC and became an advisor and worked. I probably sat on Brian Pagliano's lap. These two are so in bed, it's disgusting. And now we even know the very addresses that the Chinese courtesy messages. There wasn't one. Anybody who paid to play, as we told you, was getting a copy of everything. We also made the joke that they had the password. Didn't need a password. We didn't know. But now I'm going to explain why we do know now and why what we said before was so amazing. This is even Masons of the Conclave. I mean, some of them had to have 3 cups of coffee before they could have their cheesecake to celebrate because this upset them so bad. What did the revelation say? And we don't know if it's true, by the way. But we do know the other things we're telling you are true. We said from the beginning, because we heard Dmitry Alperovitch, the only person who ever supposedly looked at, and he didn't, the DNC server and then gave his report. He went on the news 3 times, and then they stopped him because he kept telling too much truth. He said he made up the part about Putin. Remember now they don't say anymore hacking directly related to Putin. Well, they tried to make that true with the special counsel by saying these people who work for the GRU, in other words, active federal agents working for Putin, are indicted. Good luck finding. You want to know how those names came about? When John Brennan went to Russia in the early spring of 2016.
Well, you look into the yellow pages and pull out these names?
No. He went over there and talked with all these people. He gathered the intelligence to add to the dossier to get current names of people. And that's where those names came from. They came from John Brennan. John Brennan went over and did a deal from the beginning. He was the corrupt person working with the Russians, one of them, but so was Alexandria Chalupa, because she has total ends with Putin. So was Oleg Deripaska. Who was Oleg Deripaska? That was the man giving money to John McCain, who was telling his guy, Henry Kerner, to go and totally corrupt the Senate Intelligence Committee. That would be Richard Burr, you lying sack of manure, who just, again, I want to keep my face out of the dirt. I'm not going in to look any bad stuff. And then Mark Warner, the Democratic person who's really leading that committee. And then Dianne Feinstein, China Stein, who already quit. And her guy, Daniel Jones, who still to this day has money from Oleg Deripaska fighting Trump. Fusion GPS goes on to this day because of the Senate Intelligence Committee. It was all corrupt. James Wolfe was giving everything to Ali Watkins, right? So the Intelligence Committee...
And what was little Marco Rubio doing? He sits on that committee.
Supporting it all and going against Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Because his life is on the line. All their political careers are on the line. If this comes out... Just like Mueller fighting for his life, Mark Warner, Adam Schiff. Remember, Adam Schiff took fake calls from Russians and said, yeah, I'll buy any dirt on Trump I can get. Mark Warner said, you have to have Christopher Steele come over here. I don't want to wait for you to type up the dossier. I want you to bring those lies to the Senate Intelligence Committee right now so we can start impeachment. Impeachment is what Mark Warner is looking for. And he never got anything. Because it was never verified. It was salacious, according to John Brennan, according to Comey, according to everybody. Oh, we didn't even use it to get the FISA. And then others said, oh, this is the only thing we used to get the FISA. And then they say, oh, we kept looking into it the whole time and seeing if it was true. And the whole time we kept adding new evidence. And one of the pieces of the evidence they now come out with is that Isakov's article for BuzzFeed was written by Christopher Steele. In other words, the corrupt Russian spy working as a British, Orbis Business International piece of junk company, who was being told directly by Richard Dearlove, the ex-head of the MI6. This was a British attack, folks, using Christopher Steele that was begged for by John McCain, that was begged for and created by Brennan, and that was part of the 28 treasonous crimes of Comey. And all of their buddies at the top were involved. And guess what? All of the rest of you were involved unless you do what Admiral Rogers did, and that's report them, do an audit, bring it to the public, and quit.
Hey, speaking of that, some more fake news comes from this chick named Sarah Carter, where she's linking Stefan Halper to the Russians. Stefan Halper is clearly in the United Kingdom line of corruption.
Sarah Carter's articles are posted constantly on QAnon.pub. Ask yourself why.
She was a theater major.
But she says things that will get you taken off because they're false and they're conspiracies. Not like us. We speak with open information that anyone can go. I hope when you're listening to us, you're Googling and you're looking up our articles, because everything we say is backed up. And when I'm speculating, it's not for the conclave, and I'm telling you I'm speculating. We're not speculating about any of this. From the beginning, Brian Pagliagulo and Imran Awan not only got into the secured compartmental information facility in the Congress after a year of the Congressional Intelligence Committee lobbying for a man who didn't even have a security clearance because he was probably SES, who made more money than they did, and so did his 5 members of his family, made more money than the Congress people that demanded that he get a SCIF clearance, and by golly, he got one. So you can bet your bottom dollar that that was also going to that server. So I would suggest to you that the SCIF of the most secure, top secret stuff going to Congress was going not only to China. Hello, folks. China was being sent a courtesy copy. That means that Israel was getting the first copy. Hello? What don't you know? That Israel's always, what do they have now? They have stingrays all throughout Washington, D.C. Nobody's phone is secure. You're using a black secure phone, no. You're out of your mind. There's no security in Washington, D.C. Everything's broadcast to our enemies. How do you think China got all of our IP? How do you think China stayed ahead of our entire economy the entire time that the Clintons, through bringing them into the World Trade Organization and getting their paid position on Walmart? Remember, it was the Chinese who picked up Sam Walton's idea of cheap stuff in a store and turned it into the largest corporation in the world, which, remember, Hillary Clinton was a paid member of that board. Does anybody remember any of these things? No, they don't. And did they remember that John McCain had an affair? That broke up his marriage. Does anybody remember that John McCain everybody said he was a stool pigeon. He was called the Songbird. And we're going to give him an honorable death? No, we need to celebrate.
His partners in crime are giving him this tribute.
So look through these things is what we're saying. Look through to the other side. And Trump is, because he's pointing out that China got this stuff. Well, so did everybody else, because Brian Pagliagulo wouldn't even let anyone look at the server or any of Hillary's stuff. And Andrew McCabe and Peter Strzok and Comey and the whole gang wouldn't let anybody look at her Blackberries or anybody look at her laptop, her computers, her servers, the DNC server, the server in Becerra's office, the laptop for Debbie Wasserman Schultz, any of the equipment that they didn't even look into the huge amount of equipment that they stole, Imran Awan. So no one has looked at any of this. Now, I suggest that these two programs they were using for the Soros money and the way that they were attacking, they really have means of attack. They were using not Cambridge Analytica, a little data they got from a study done in England. No. They were using Strategic Communication Laboratories. They were using a version of that was upgraded by $1.5 billion given by Eric Schmidt. So they were using high-tech intelligence attempts to win that election. They absolutely could not believe they lost it. And to this very day, if they could impeach Trump, they actually believe that a unicorn with wings is going to go pick up Hillary and bring her to the White House and everything's going to be fine. No, Hillary knew from the beginning. It was pay to play, folks.
And, we could even go deeper, but I'll just say this on the surface so people will know that we can take this further and we have in other audios. When you're looking at China, then you also have to look at Henry Kissinger. When you look at Henry Kissinger, you've got to look at Andrew Marshall at the Highlands Forum. And then you go back and you see George Mark Malloch Brown. I mean, this is a world conspiracy of globalism, but at least we've named the players now. We've identified them and we can watch them and take them down one by one.
And they're so stupid. I'm going to give you now. You're sitting down because of what I'm about to tell you. When Dmitry Alperovitch was on the news, and after he wrote his report, of course, which we studied thoroughly, and then people have torn it to pieces, forensicators and all these people have gone in and said, no, could not have been a hack, not possible. Someone had to be working on these computers to cause this to happen, right? That's a fact. So what are we telling you? We're telling you what was on the news. We're not telling you from some secret source. Yeah, that conclave's secret because you wouldn't want to know these ugly dudes here. They're not. You can't bring them out into public, and that's the reason I'm an audio dude, not a video dude. Dmitry Alperovitch went in on the phone to the Democratic National Committee server. And within 5 minutes of installing what he said was his premier, basically all it is a virus protection device called Falcon, and it's proprietary. So he put it on the DNC, And he said within, 5 minutes of putting it on there, he was absolutely certain that it was the Russians, and within 10 minutes he was certain it was Putin himself. Now, there is no record that he ever went to that machine. There is no record that Dmitry Alperovitch ever touched the servers at the DNC. That's a fact. What he shows you are simply what he got as readouts once he put Falcon on. Now, he then later put Falcon on now this is amazing. This is truly amazing. When Nancy Pelosi was accused of forcing 40 members of the DCCC onto a cluster that Imran Awan and his 4 family members were in control of, remember, Nancy Pelosi forced 40 Democratic members to go into the DCCC collective of their computers all being controlled by Imran Awan. Does that sound a little fishy to anybody? So after Dmitry found out, somebody hacked. What a lie. He said the Russians, and then he put the 2 old Russian footprints on the DNC, and that's a fact.
Fancy Bear, and what was the other one?
Fancy Bear and Cozy Bear, because he used version 1.0. There's version 2.1 at that time. He's the only idiot, stupid enough, a globalist, Atlantic Council member who is in control of technology. In other words, he's control of the entire Truth Ministry in Europe and now Facebook. That's right. Dmitry Alperovitch is the Atlantic Council's highest tech advisor. He's on their board. He tells them technologically what to do. So he looks at the DNC, and he then gives a report, and that report says that his proprietary Falcon, which does nothing, he admits cannot stop future hacks. Interesting. Now, mind you, he was looking at it, we told you publicly in December of 2015 when all this started, but he was looking at it in July of 2015. Okay? And the reason we know that is because of the, other references we couldn't vet, but now if it's true, this release is true, then it was early. It was as early as the spring, and then again in July, and then again in December of 2015, that the DNC was told they were being hacked or messed with. They weren't being messed with, folks. Brian Pagliano was sending courtesy copies to everyone who paid Hillary Clinton illegal emolument funds when she was the Secretary of State. It goes all the way back to then. And probably back to when she was a senator, too.
And so was Russia getting a copy, too, in these courtesy distributions?
Matter of fact, I just figured something out.
Oh.
No, they're not. Russians got nothing. Russians weren't even part of this.
Well, they got all of our technology.
Well, they were our friends. They're not going to hack us and leave footprints. That's stupid.
Okay, what's your Eureka?
Oh, my gosh. Hillary voted for the Magnitsky Act, and then she voted against it. She was paid by the Russians when she was a senator. That's the reason she's friends with Natalia Veselnitskaya. That's the reason she told the State Department, Victoria Nuland, John Kerry, she told everyone in the State Department, but particularly she told Victoria Nuland to let Natalia Veselnitskaya, a known Russian spy, in to do the frame-up of Trump Jr. Okay? That's a fact. And we even know that the British were in on that. John Hannigan came over. We know the dates. We know that Admiral Rogers was fighting with Brennan because he let this happen. In Fort Meade, Maryland, they were wiretapping Trump Towers during this setup with a Russian spy. Well, guess what? That Russian spy represents the Magnitsky Act. Hillary voted for it. She was the biggest person for it. Then she was the biggest person against it. So therefore, yes, I would suggest the Russians already had the pay-to-play courtesy messages, and that they had already paid her into the Clinton foundations her payoff when she was a senator to support the Magnitsky Act, which is as crooked as anything could possibly be. Don't get me started on that. How do orphans have anything to do with Bill Browder ripping off Russia and not paying any taxes to America or Britain? That is just insider Clinton cronyism that goes back to the White House corruption that is really in some cases beyond your mind. So Dmitry Alperovitch said, when he looked at that DNC server, he couldn't stop hacks, and that already installed in it were some type of bots. And those bots, he couldn't get out. And those bots are able to grab messages and send them where they want. And this is all in his report. Go back, look at the news reports. It's in our reports. Go back, look at the videos. He admitted all of this. And he says those bots he couldn't stop. And that he was called in December, but didn't do anything until the FBI had come and officially announced to the DNC, to Debbie Wasserman Schultz, for about the 5th time that she'd been hacked. It was supposed to set them off. It was the key thing. But they were waiting and waiting. They couldn't get their show together. They couldn't get the FISA approval for the Carter Page setup because it refers to the Russian hacking. That's the reason Hillary waited until after July in the Crossfire Hurricane. 8 messages in a row, 8 texts in a row, she talks about the Russian hacking. 17 agencies all agree. No, they don't. No 2 agencies agree. And there was no Russian hacking. That was Dmitry Alperovitch setting that up. So here's what I'm telling you, folks. In July, or even as early as April, Dmitry Alperovitch went on to the Democratic National Committee server to leave footprints and to help set up the bots that Brian Pagliagulo had set up as courtesy copies of all emails. Well, they couldn't do that to all the... I forget. I can't tell you the number. The number of countries paying the Clinton Foundation is staggering. I don't want to misquote it because it's so staggering. Dozens and dozens and dozens of our enemies paid into her foundation when she'd go visit our enemies. Why? They got access to her server and everything she was doing. In other words, she's responsible for the death of millions. She's responsible not just for the death of the Benghazi situation, but also the Stinger missiles she got paid $100,000 for sending to Syria, which also killed people. But then all the bombing. What was all that bombing? That was corporate interference in the countries that we wanted, that Obama and Hillary wanted to turn into refugees that would pad the pockets of the Pope, of Turkey, of Syria, of the UN, and ultimately the 159 now, some of them have closed, agencies that handle refugees, which is a mega billion-dollar industry, which is simply human trafficking in this country. Try to find those refugees. Look up any refugees after 5 years. See where they're at. I dare you. We tried.
Okay. I'm cutting off this audio right now. There's going to be part 2. So if you look at the link, you can pick up where we're going to be leaving off.